Good evening. It is 5:30, and I'm calling this meeting of the Local Agency Formation Commission to order. Usually, I would read an opening statement when we open the meeting. I'm going to dispense with that tonight because we have an agenda item from our executive officer who will be taking us through some LAFCO 101. So he'll be going into much more detail. So with that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll to establish quorum and read the meeting statements.
Members Frost.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Carter. Little.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
Walton.
Here.
And Desmond.
Here.
And we do have our quorum.
And go ahead and read the statement.
So this meeting of the Local Agency Formation Commission is cablecast live on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast and AT&T U-verse cable systems. This meeting is closed captioned and live streamed at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting replay Saturday, August 10th at 3 p.m. on channel 14. This meeting can also be viewed at youtube.com /Metro Cable 14. The Sacramento Local Agency Formation Commission fosters public engagement during the meeting and encourages public participation, civility, and use of courteous language. The board does not condone the use of profanity, vulgar language, gestures, or other inappropriate behavior, including personal attacks or threats directed towards any meeting participant. Each speaker will be given 2 minutes to make a public comment and are limited to making one comment per agenda or off-agenda item. Please be mindful of the public comment procedures to avoid being interrupted or disconnected while making your comment. To make a comment in person, please fill out a speaker request form and hand it to clerk staff, and the chairperson will open public comments for each agenda or off-agenda item and direct the clerk to call the name of each speaker. When the clerk calls your name or the chair calls your name, please come to the podium and make your comment. If a speaker is unavailable to make a comment prior to the closing of public comments, the speaker waives their request to speak, and the clerk will file the speaker request form in the record. The clerk will manage the timer and allow each speaker 2 minutes to make a comment. You may also feel free to send written comments by email to boardclerk@saccounty.gov, and your comment will be routed to the board and filed in the record.
Okay, thank you. And now I would invite everybody to stand and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go right to our first agenda item.
And your first agenda item this evening is the public forum, public comment.
Okay, thank you. This is for agenda items that are not on the posted agenda. We have one speaker signed up, Juliet Porro. Good evening. You all have 2 minutes.
That's okay.
I actually came tonight because item number 7, it's okay, thank you. You're going to be doing a presentation about the powers of LAFCO and authority and how the process works. And I'm here because about a year ago, the Board of Supervisors passed a resolution to try to look to see if the city of Sacramento might consider evaluating if it would make sense financially and from a maintenance standpoint to transfer the ownership of Del Paso Park. And it's almost been a year now, and I don't really know what the next step in the process is. I don't know if we need somebody to bring it before the city council, somebody maybe on the city council, and I just thought I would come and ask. So.
Okay. Thank you. Well, when we get to item 7, I mean, maybe our executive officer can talk about kind of that process in general.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Looks like no further off-agenda public comments. Our next item, Madam Clerk.
And item number 2 this evening is approve the meeting action summary for June 12th, 2024.
Okay, and so item 2, 3, and 4, we'll take those together. Those are our consent items. Are there any board members with any questions or comments about the consent items? Seeing none, do we have any members of the public? I don't see any members of the public signed up to speak on the consent items.
Second. I'm sorry, Chair, should I read items 3 and 4 into the record?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, and so your item number 3 is to receive claims dated June 12th, 2024 through July 16th, 2024. Item number 4 is to review of monthly budget reports.
Okay, thank you. And we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Kaplan, second by Commissioner Frost. Please vote
No voting on the screen.
when it shows up.
I'm sorry?
Everybody have it?
And the motion carries.
Okay. That'll bring us to our next item.
And so item number 5 this evening is to review MSR project plan and consider resetting the priority schedule to accommodate requests for a cemetery study.
Okay. Mr. Enriquez?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I'm going to pass this on to your analyst, Desiree Fox, who will make the presentation.
Good evening, Chairperson Desmond and Commissioners. I have a presentation for you just to have some references on the screen, if we can have that pulled up. Thank you. So the item before you today is to consider developing a schedule for cemetery district municipal service reviews. And this comes after a member of the public both wrote into staff in the LAFCO office and also made mention of wanting to review cemeteries through the municipal service review process at a previous commission meeting. So our recommendation before you all today is to, number 1, review the MSR project plan that was previously adopted. And if the MSR project plan is reprioritized per your decision, then we would need to be directed to prepare a request for proposal of an MSR for cemetery districts. And then we would also need to receive direction specifying what the MSR should include, and that looks like pretty much producing a feasibility study. So I'm going to first put on our screen our MSR project plan. So we recently had an ad hoc committee to look at the MSR process, and one of the things that was birthed from it was we created a project plan to keep us on track with how we would produce MSRs. So cycle 1, which is set to officially begin in 2025, with the purpose of giving us a clean start to really track that 5-year cycle that we want to maintain, and also to give staff enough time to be trained to handle the MSRs that will eventually come our way. So cycle 1 includes water district, fire, park and rec, cemetery, and dependent districts. We do have that listed in order of priorities. So right now, cemetery districts, if we were to stay in that priority, probably wouldn't be reviewed until 2027 and 2028. So we would want to know if the commission is looking for staff to reprioritize and bump them up to a 2024 review, earlier in 2025, what direction you would like for staff to go. In addition to that, the member of the public didn't specifically specify if he wanted us to look at cemeteries one by one. We're not sure if he wanted to create a new cemetery special district or what was his actual approach. So we would need to do a feasibility study to see, hey, are we going to do MSRs, a countywide MSR, to include all the cemeteries within the county, which are 4 different cemetery districts that have a different number of specific cemeteries, or are we going to, as I said before, look at them one by one? And this is just a little bit of a reference so you can see the boundaries of our cemetery districts. We have 4 districts, the largest district being El Grove Consumnes Cemetery, and they have, I believe, 6 or 7 cemeteries. Some of these districts only have 1 cemetery within their boundaries. And that is my conclusion. Our recommendation, once again, is to, number 1, review the project plan and then provide staff direction on the scope and the pretty much the scope and the time you guys would like for us to attach to the cemetery request. That is all.
Okay.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, actually, before you go into your deliberations, just a few items of note. This request really is only to study, or if you choose to bump up the cemeteries, it really would only be to study the issue. LAFCO is constrained in its ability to initiate certain proposals. So in this particular case, if you were to form or expand an existing district, we would have to have someone from from the public or an agency apply to LAFCO, because you unilaterally cannot do that. So I just wanted to clarify that, and we'll go over that a little bit more in LAFCO 101. But
Great. Thank you, Jose. Appreciate that clarification. Any comments or questions at this point from commissioners? Commissioner Frost.
Jose, I was wondering, when you say to study the issue, are you talking about the issue of the demographics and available grave sites? The reason I say that is because there are 2 districts, cemetery districts in my supervisory district that are running out of space, and they're trying to figure out, is that what this emanates from?
yes, essentially the request from Mr. Velasquez came from the fact that if you look at the map on your screen, basically you got a wide swath right through the middle of the county, and then at the southwest side of the county they're not served by a public cemetery. And with the city of Sacramento, while they are able to provide cemeteries, they're basically mostly filled out. And again, we're only talking specifically about public cemeteries. And so the question becomes, if you were to reprioritize your MSR order, it would be, number one, how the existing cemetery districts are doing. That would be the MSR for them. And then they would also address the issue of what to do with the areas that are currently not served by a public cemetery district, and what would be recommendations for that. We will definitely address the issue. Very well aware of Fair Oaks Cemetery District and some of the constraints that they're experiencing at the moment. We would basically be able to document, maybe perhaps get a consultant who can help us with trying to find some options for them. But again, we would not be able to initiate any specific action, but we would certainly document, what some folks are experiencing on the ground, that they want to lay to rest a beloved family member, and they're either outside of a public cemetery or they're within the boundaries of a cemetery district that's quickly running out of space.
So this would, though, fall within our normal MSR, function of doing MSRs, since they are districts, except for the non-district area. What you're saying is they would have to approach LAFCO with an application for a district.
That is correct.
LAFCO can't make recommendations without an application, basically.
The MSR can make recommendations. It's just that your ability to address it is limited in terms of initiating a formation of a new district or annexing lands, especially annexing lands. If the solution is to, let's say, expand Elk Grove Cosumnes because they're doing wonderfully. I don't know. I'm speaking in generalities.
Yeah.
But let's say that the recommendation is, let's expand the boundaries so they meet to the southern boundary of Fair Oaks Cemetery District and pick up all those areas in the unincorporated area and the southern end of Rancho Cordova. If that's the recommendation, somebody would still have to apply to LAFCO to get that into their service area.
Yeah.
But we really won't know until we study. And as Ms. Fox indicated, the question becomes: are we looking individual cemeteries, or do we look at the issue as a whole with the county wide? And so that obviously it's a different breadth of scope and a different cost, because now you're looking at a much bigger piece of the puzzle than you're looking at individual pieces.
And would it create a burden on LAFCO to look at the entire picture? Because I'm thinking, I don't think that would be a bad thing, but I know the MSRs are costly and time-staking, and we already have this whole huge plan for a lot of MSRs. We're already doing a lot. So can you comment on your thoughts regarding that?
Things are going to have to break. And it's one of the reasons why the project plan was developed with the assistance of some commissioners on the ad hoc committee and Ms. Fox. Basically, we're prioritizing. We know that we're behind on several districts. And, by order of magnitude, we'll look at the water districts first, then we'll look at the fire, and then we'll get to the cemetery districts in 2027. Or, right, is that right? Yeah. But the thing is that if you prioritize cemetery districts above, let's say, fire, we can certainly do that. But again, there's a cost associated with that. In this specific case, we wouldn't be able to tackle that in-house, so we would have to get consultants to help us out with that.
Great. Okay, thank you. I yield.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Frost. Commissioner Kaplan.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Frost, thank you for leading that off. Just a couple questions to follow up. So I know we have like our project plans. Is there, I know it's kind of nice to stick within a subject matter, but is there anything that would prohibit, or is there a cost reason why you couldn't look at maybe a cemetery district, one or two that we know currently have capacity issues, that could look at that where maybe there isn't a fire or a parks district that has that imminent need? Because, I mean, MSRs haven't been done in a while. Cemetery districts haven't been done since 2004. I don't know. I don't have the sheet in front of me. I thought I did, but I don't have the timeline when the last ones were done. You know, how many have been done since 2004 that are part of the Water, Fire, and Parks District that maybe they can wait an extra year such that you can start maybe looking at a cemetery district or not? Is that implausible? Is that...
It's not implausible. It's just that, you know, like I said, something has to give. So if you move up something gets bumped off. And so then the question kind of becomes, what do you want to bump off? On the fire district side, the last fire district that was done is 2017 for Herald, FPD. The next one that was on the list was going to be Sac Metro. But even Sac Metro has, you know, right now, because of the next item on the agenda, which is Florin, you know, we need to bump off Sac Metro in order to address Florence. So you've got a lot of competing things, and at some point, you know, you set the priority. If you want us to look at the cemetery districts, my recommendation would be that we look at all of the cemetery districts as a whole, because if we want to address that one piece of the county, or the two pieces of the county that are currently not served, it's better to look at the picture holistically than one or two districts. But again, that means that basically we move those up, and then other districts are going to have to, you know, take a back seat. So it's a matter of you letting us know what you want us to do.
Because I see MSR somewhat as it's a living document that we create a good plan and the new information comes up that may require adjustment. I am open to looking at that adjustment, knowing that, you know, this is new for me, but that there are several cemetery districts that are running out of space. There are not space in other areas. There's an open area for which there is no public district, especially if you look at some of the parks and fire and water districts, and they've had more recent MSRs, and we've no indication that they've got, you know, governance issues or viability issues. For me, I'm willing to look at the holistic picture based off of this information, and how do you appropriately shift some things based on priorities. So I am open and believe that, especially if you say we should take them all holistically, I think we should. We should potentially try and see if we can move it up on time-wise a little bit more, because this is death, taxes, you know, kind of an essential thing in the government process, and nothing ever happens overnight, but this is kind of an imminent thing if we know where Sacramento's run out of space and others are, that this affects families daily. So I don't know how my other commissioners feel, but I am open, and I think that this is a priority of something we need to see the holistic picture on. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Little.
Thank you, Chair. My feeling is somewhat different, I think, than Councilwoman Kaplan or Commissioner Kaplan. I think, in my view, I'd like to see us stay on task with what we are doing currently with our MSRs. I think we put a lot of thought into the process of water and fire and so forth in prioritizing what we're going to do. It's not like we're not going to be doing this. I'm not sure that we need to move it forward at this time. I'd like to see us stay on task with the current plan, and then perhaps if somebody, since this is essentially just doing almost like a survey to see what can be done, I think it would be more appropriate for someone on the outside to come forward with a plan or an idea that we can then look at in view of all of this and do an MSR at that point. But I just feel like 2 years out is not too long to wait to do something like this.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The issue of running out of land has been brought up for at least a decade with the cemetery districts. And it's been a problem for quite a while. I agree with Commissioner Little in the sense of I kept waiting for the cemetery districts to bring forward certain ideas, and that hasn't occurred yet. If we can encourage that in an informal way, that's great. The issue with water and fire is that there are potential consolidations, and that's with formal applications, formal discussions, et cetera, et cetera. And perhaps our priorities should be on when the districts, no matter sewer, water, fire, cemetery, when they bring up the issue with their ideas and what they're willing to do. Anyway, that's my concern. I don't have a sense of super urgency about it, in the sense of this has been a long-term problem, but what have the public cemeteries done to try to solve it? So that's a question. And I have a second question. Doesn't have to be answered tonight. How many private ones are in our county? I have no idea. I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't know the question to that either, and I just want, the public cemetery, at least some public cemeteries that we know of are having issues. I haven't heard of private cemeteries having the same issue.
Okay.
But of course, for someone who's a member of the public, private cemeteries may be cost prohibitive, so.
Mm-hmm. Well, then perhaps as an alternative, maybe we should do, I'm sorry to lay this on the staff, but maybe we should do some kind of scoping, a smaller scoping a study to see exactly where all this is, instead of diving into MSRs and changing our program our plan that many of us worked a long time on. So maybe we could come up with some sort of mini scoping thing to see, okay, where are the issues, answer some of these questions, these basic questions we have. I hate to see LAFCO take on the responsibility of creating all this, and then maybe there's no participation, or maybe there's only partial participation by some of these districts. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
May I speak?
Yeah, Commissioner Frost, she was teed up first, then I'll go back. Okay, good. Commissioner Walton.
Oh, there it is.
I got you.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I tend to agree with what you just said. I think it's important that there's more information about what they envision happening before we change our priorities. We already set the priorities. I hesitate to, deviate from that. I prefer to stay on. I think it's smarter to stay on course. But once something was presented, it could come back to us, right? And then we could, see if we want to shift it. Because it is only 4 districts, right? The cemetery is 4, is that right? So whereas, some of the other, fire and water are multitudes. So, in a sense, it probably wouldn't be as long of a MSR as delving into some of the other things. I don't know. No, you disagree.
You would be surprised, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Frost. And we have public comment on this, just so all of you are aware.
I just wanted to add that I Well, I think everybody had some good comments. I think this is important. I think what I wanted to say is that I think water and fire are the living, and that those are priorities over, I don't want to say it because it seems cruel, but, it does seem like the water and the fire should be prioritized. And I didn't think of the scoping, but I don't know what that entails. But I like the idea of something, maybe just what do we have, so we at least have an idea of how many private and where are they, and how many public, and just that gives us more information. It informs our decision. That's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Jones.
Yes, thank you. Quick suggestion is that we use the SDAC as an ad hoc committee, and perhaps have a workshop specifically inviting representatives from these cemetery districts. And for me, that would be a scoping event.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that suggestion. Actually, before I'm going to get to public comment here in a moment, I do agree we have to take a holistic look at these, but it doesn't necessarily have to be just by changing our whole MSR schedule. We could do that, kind of have that scoping discussion, have a workshop, hear from the cemetery districts. As part of that scoping, I'd like to hear what some of the, I'm curious, I don't know at the state level legislatively, is there assistance for people maybe that don't live in a cemetery district, don't have those services available? I'm sure there's other elements here that could be part of that scoping discussion, but I also think it's important to know that it's some cemetery districts, it's not simply a lack of space, it's also funding, it's also how they're structured. There's a lot, and I see a representative in the audience today from the Fair Oaks Cemetery District, which actually is mostly in my supervisory district, and they have some challenges that can be resolved outside of involving LAFCO. And certainly some discussions need to be had with the appropriate people with respect to the issues with these cemetery districts. But I think a holistic approach, but certainly that scoping approach, and maybe I'll talk to you, Jose, about getting something on the agenda, maybe if we can possibly do it this year, if we have enough time. But we'll have another chance to ask some questions and comments here. Let me go now to public comment on this item. I'll start with Craig. Craig Herberger. It'll be Craig, and then Mark, and then Jonathan.
Craig would like to defer to go after me because I could lay out the
And you're Mark?
Mark.
Okay, Mark.
The cemetery guy.
You've got it. Come on up.
Thank you very much.
Hard for me to see that far out, with the...
I'm probably going to ask for an extra 2 minutes, but I'll start with my first 2 minutes. Yes. Okay.
Try to wrap it up in 2 minutes, okay?
Sure.
If you speak in between them.
Just put the microphones, stand in between them. There you go.
As I mentioned before, I was a general counsel for many cemetery districts, and I was also a city attorney for several cities. My 2 cents right now is you really need to put public comments before your discussions, because there's so much information that you're about to hear from everybody on this. Almost on everything you pointed out, I have brought somebody here today to speak their 2 minutes to address those issues. So we have somebody from Sylvan's Fair Oaks. The district manager for every cemetery district was going to be here tonight. I gave them the wrong time. However, we do have a representative from Fair Oaks. We have a representative, the district manager from Elk Grove's Consumers Cemetery District here. Belinda from Galt Arno, I could show you my text. She says her board and her are 100% behind us, as is Sylvan. Sylvan couldn't be here because I gave them the wrong time. You have every cemetery district in support of this. I'm going to point out there is no opposition. I'm also going to point out there is nobody here from fire or water district saying, no, we got to go first. You actually have a large constituent sitting here telling you of a need, and I'm going to use some of your own words, ladies and gentlemen, urgency and imminent need. And I'm talking about urgency. There is an urgency. We've been talking about this for 10 years. Commissioner Jones had mentioned. So this is not something that could be pushed back. And I'll say to the point, because this is going to end up being either a new district or most likely a new district being formed here. That takes a long time, longer than just a review of current other special districts that have, as Vice Chair Kaplan pointed out, has had much more recent MSRs. Our MSR was in '04. Okay, so the urgency is there. The reason for why you prioritize this, and let's be real, we change priorities all the time. This is a document. Your document says, I'm hereby requesting an extra 2 minutes. Thank you.
1 extra minute, Mark.
Thank you. So I don't think the public was invited to address the priorities list that you guys are discussing today, because that's really all that's before you. Should we move cemeteries up? Answer, yes. Why? It's urgent, there's an imminent need, and it's going to take a lot more planning before you could actually put somebody in the ground for a reasonable cost than these other MSRs that have been done more recent. If I was part, or the public was part of this discussion of your priorities, then maybe you could have had a little bit more information and understood then why cemeteries should actually be pushed up. Oh, by the way, regarding the scope of it, I've seen many MSRs, including our previous MSR from this district from '04. You include all the cemeteries. You don't do it piecemeal. It's a holistic approach, every MSR. And I invite you to look back at the previous MSR the county had done. It addresses everything. Regarding ideas, we've got tons of them. It's just not other districts' responsibility to come here. But you've asked for it. I've brought it forward. We've got plenty of ideas of what spots can be used, how to fund some of this. I'm throwing it back at you. That's LAFCO's responsibility and staff. That's what this MSR is for, is to give you all of the answers that you need so then you can move forward and not drag it out. We can't drag it out. This is an urgent need. This is step one of everything you all want to do regarding the cemeteries that are running out.
Thank you, Mark.
And the new ones. Thank you very much.
Craig, and then we'll do Jonathan and Brian, unless there's more public comment. If you have time. Pete, you will be last. Yes.
Hi.
Good evening.
My name is Craig Herberger, just a local mortician. I'm just here to let you know that the public does need some options. I meet with families on a daily basis. I have a number of chapels. The public doesn't have a lot of options. And the people that only have the options are if they live in those districts. The whole city of Sacramento doesn't have a city cemetery. It's been full since 1950. So everybody has to go to a private cemetery. That's thousands of dollars. And it's getting very extreme. So that's why I'm here. I'm just in support of the districts trying to make a decision to offer people some more choices. And I'm very aware of Fair Oaks and Sylvan, and they're, and Folsom doesn't have a cemetery. Rancho Cordova is almost full. So people just need help. That's the only reason I came here. I just wanted to support this issue because it does need to be looked at. And I am talking to the people on a daily basis, and there is a need for it. So thank you for your help. Thank you very much.
Jonathan. Good evening.
Good evening. I am the general manager for the Elk Grove Consumnes Cemetery District. Again, I am here to impress upon you the need of the people of the county of Sacramento for public burial options. There are a number of private cemeteries, yes, but much as Craig mentioned, they can be thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. And the state of the economy right now, people just cannot afford it. To address something that was brought up about the unincorporated areas, according to the MSR of 2004, the unincorporated areas to the east of my district and to the southwest of my district are my sphere of influence. So I'm pretty much all that path through the middle. The areas that aren't covered are the city of Sacramento and the city of Folsom. We see, at least on my behalf, we see many, many people, especially from South Sacramento, since they're close to our district lines, calling us asking, hey, can we come to your, we don't have any other choices. Can we come into your district? Well, the health and safety code clearly states, you don't live in my district. We can't serve you. It's heartbreaking for everybody. I would like to serve the people of not just my district and my sphere of influence, but I think that every manager wants to serve the people of their communities and their county. And this is just something that's not being done in some of the areas that really do need to be addressed. And I think an MSR would certainly, take that into scope. Secondly, just like Mark brought up, 20 years since we had a last MSR. And many other districts, possibly some of the ones you're already going to relook at in fire and parks, have been done within that last 20 years. The last thing I'm going to leave you with, just because I only have a couple seconds, is I believe the numbers state that we are going to be facing one of the greatest events, really, in our history, is that within the next 10 years, almost a third of the population of the United States is pretty much going to pass away. Okay? That's the baby boomers. They're all in their 70s now. That's a need. Yes, fire is important, water is important, these things are important, life is important. But with one of the biggest, for lack of a better word, die-off events going to happen within the next few years, I think that really pushes the need for this forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Brian, and then Pete.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Hughes. I'm an attorney with Best and Krieger. I represent 3 of those 4 districts on the map, General Counsel. I just have a few comments that I'd like to make. Yes, I do agree with all of my colleagues, but I do acknowledge the difficult choice that you have in making priorities on your MSRs. They're all important services. I also represent more than 20 cemetery districts across California, from Southern California to Northern California. I oversee multiple expansions, I oversee multiple creations, and multiple mergers of all types of districts, including cemetery districts. I know them inside and out. So if any of the chairpersons have questions or staff need advice on what the best way to go is, I will make myself available, because it does seem that there are a lot of questions and unknowns about how cemetery districts work, and I can represent them fairly and equally. The one thing I'd like to comment is that many people have discussed the need. If you look at the map, the public cemetery districts provide the need in their districts. Most of the fire and water services that are available to all citizens within the county, excluding some areas. Sacramento being the largest area, they don't have that service. It's not that service is there. They don't have that service. So I'd ask the question, what would the board do if the largest city in the county did not have a fire district or did not have a water district? Would they potentially make that a priority to create not necessarily an MSR, but some potential oversight action or review of that area? That's what's going on right now with the cemetery districts. Again, if you look at the lower socioeconomic people, they are not allowed to go and access the services provided in the other districts. I'll repeat that. They cannot access those services. So they do not have those services. Again, Brian Hughes, I'm available if you need me. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Pete.
Hi, my name is Pete Schroeder. I am the chair of the board of the Fair Oaks Cemetery District. I came in this room expecting to see a LAFCO one-on-one meeting. So imagine my surprise when I saw cemetery district boundaries on the map. I thought that was pretty
You're kidding,
good.
Pete. Really?
I am totally
okay, all right.
truthful here.
How serendipitous.
Now, serendipity is on my side. Supervisor Desmond, Supervisor Frost, and my SDAC colleague, Gay Jones, are somewhat familiar with our issue. It involves TRAs, tax revenue areas of the Fair Oaks Cemetery District. There's over 300 that could be, should be contributing to our tax revenue. In fact, 23 are. This has been a long problem that we recently discovered because we were concerned about revenues and money in the bank, things like that. So we looked up all the individual TRAs with the cooperation of the County Tax Assessor's Office. And we found out that, in fact, of our 5 board members, 3 are not contributing to the Fair Oaks Cemetery District. It's a challenge. We've talked to the County Tax Assessor's Office. We've talked with Supervisor Desmond. We've met with Supervisor Frost. Ms. Jones and I have discussed it. We went to Assemblyman Josh Hoover's office also and I've talked with Jose about it. So we have a kind of a circular path that's going around here, and nobody seems to have any solutions for it. We are pretty tight on funds, as you might imagine, with all that limited type of revenue, and there's got to be a resolution to this because we are serving an expanded boundary. It was expanded like 40 years ago, and most of the TRAs, as you can see by what I said before, a large majority are not contributing. We have to rectify this situation. Nobody's going to want to take over our district when we're in such a dire strait. So I would appeal to the board to consider some type of a meeting, a hearing, a council, something like that, where we can explain our situation and hopefully find some resolution. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete.
Okay.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. That concludes the public comment. Commissioner Frost.
Who can fix the tax rate problem? That's just one question, but I'm curious, is it LAFCO that fixes that?
No, LAFCO usually wants to file a certificate of completion. The train leaves the station and LAFCO's done. There is a provision within the rev and tax in which the Board of Supervisors can reopen the tax rate area and the allocation. However, all parties that currently receive a portion of that property tax dollar must agree to sit down at the table and reevaluate and recalculate the formula. So there is a way, but it's from a political standpoint, it's very, very difficult.
Okay, I'm just going to keep going. Why are the cemetery districts not applying to expand their district? And would that fix the tax? If their district was expanded, would that just automatically fix that issue as LAFCO worked through the process of expanding the district?
Because actually your question has 2 different dimensions. The issue that Mr. Schrodinger talked about the Fair Oaks Cemetery District, that is separate from the general question that you're asking. If, let's say, Elk Grove Cosumnes, we expand it to serve the remaining area, then at that point, the issue of the revenues would have to be reopened, and if they receive a portion of the ad valorem tax, that can be addressed during the LAFCO process. On the Fair Oaks Cemetery District side, like I said, that annexation was completed in the 1980s. The train has long left the station, and there's nothing for us at LAFCO can do. We can try a maneuver, but it would have to be in such a way that all parties agree to that maneuver and utilize the LAFCO process. But again, it's a negotiation at that point. And I'm speaking specifically to the Fair Oaks Cemetery District issue. If we were to perceive, let's say, again, an Elk Grove Cosumnes Cemetery District annexation, let's say we expand them to the east, ad valorem would certainly be something on the table, and that can be addressed through the LAFCO process from that standpoint.
Who are the parties that would have to agree at the table?
Anybody currently receiving an ad valorem taxes I can't remember whether school districts have to be one of those parties. Typically, we don't touch school districts. Whatever they receive, they receive. But I would imagine probably the fire district that serves that area, which I believe is Sacramento. And actually, we're talking about the vast majority of the service area of Fair Oaks Cemetery District. So right now, the TRAs in which they're currently receiving property taxes are specific to the community of Fair Oaks. So anything outside of that community would have to be involved. So maybe portions of Citrus Heights, and then if there are any other district that currently receives Navalorum, the county would certainly be one of those parties. I would have to ask the... Oh, they're not.
So I don't want this to turn into a discussion, about specific cemetery districts. That's beyond the scope of this agenda item.
Yeah.
But it's certainly the commission has to. Because there's a lot of materials, background materials. I think we would all need to have that discussion. But I think this illustrates maybe the need for another workshop about this.
Yes.
So that's kind of where my head is. Commissioner Kaplan, Commissioner Kaplan?
Thanks, Chair. There we go. Thank you, Chair. So with the City of Sacramento, I am the newest member on LAFCO, so I'm getting up to speed quickly, and thank you for the information. So if we've not had space in a public cemetery in the City of Sacramento, does the City of Sacramento actually have a district?
No, as part of their municipal services of the city, it automatically has the authority to conduct cemetery services within the incorporated areas. The question really for Sacramento would be, where would you cite an actual cemetery plot, right? And so we were discussing this internally about how to treat the city, because the city can automatically, you already have it as part of your incorporation documents, you can automatically create a public cemetery. It's the siting of the public cemetery that would be the issue. And we were talking about that basically the biggest portion of open space for the city is Natomas, but it's in a flood zone. Would you want to cite a cemetery there? So it really there are some issues on the city side that we can certainly work with the city, but the city can activate that authority whenever it wants. It just needs to find a plot of land and say, we're going to provide a public cemetery.
So, and then, and thank you for that background. So many issues. What is the average cost of, if there was to be an MSR, a holistic MSR, and what is the average time?
That would have to be a part of the RFP. In the RFP, we usually ask the not to exceed cost plus the time. Off the top of my head, probably about 50 to 60,000. Any consultants that are listening out there, please come under that amount. But that would be my guess. I've
kind of already stated that I see this as an important issue. I fully agree and don't disagree that water districts and fire districts are, of imminent, since we've had some concerns with some fire districts and some water districts, and taking a look at those. And of course, I wasn't on the board when the ad hoc committee came together and discovered priorities. But one of the things I know through my background of having been elected for over 20 years is no matter what plan we have, that plan is going to change. And I very much learned doing facility master plans, and you go for a bond and you think you are going to spend your money one way, and the roof may leak, there may be hail that damages other things, there could be fire, and you bring the board back together and based off of new information, decide, do we stay? How do we spend the money? So I'm hearing everybody. I think we do need a little bit more comprehensive information. I think this is really important. So I would like to urge the chair, I think this really does need to happen sooner rather than later, that we get more comprehensive information. We reach out to the cemetery districts, ask them to give us their wants and needs and presentations so that we as a board can see that information and see if it reaches a priority that we can alter where it is on the MSR list. I'm probably kind of already there, but I believe more information is really needed so that we are thoughtful and mindful, but I also think it's really important to have all the cemetery districts here to hear from them, especially if Commissioner Jones, you are our wise and historical perspective. But this conversation for 10 years, no, this conversation for over a decade means it's imminent, and infrastructure is imminent, and planning is imminent, and just because we're not seeing New Orleans style issues right now after the hurricane hit doesn't mean that can't happen tomorrow and we need to plan. So I am very supportive of sooner rather than later asking all the cemetery districts to come together so we can talk about this issue to look at if we need to prioritize.
Great. Great. Appreciate that. Before I go to Commissioner Jones, I think, and that will also help understand where the LAFCO role may not be appropriate, where there may be a different role. So you and I can work on that, scheduling that. Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, please work on that. With total respect to everyone present, we're way behind on the workshop agenda. This obviously is an in-depth, multifaceted issue with hundreds of questions and pieces of information that we need to gather. We're not going to be able to do that tonight. So I would suggest whether the timeline is sometime in October or November, when, and now please, I'm sorry, these guys, the staff is maxed out already, folks. So we need to work with staff and figure out a time, even extra session, and I'll be glad to volunteer with the SDAC time to do that very thing at our next SDAC meeting. That seems to me appropriate. And we need to remember we can't conflate special districts with the cities within our purveyorship. That's a whole other ballywick. So again, lots of questions. Sorry to dump that on you, but I think the SDAC would be a perfect place for this, to expand it and have some sort of workshop under that auspices. We can bring that information back and decide then. We can't do anything more tonight.
Great. Thank you. Always sage advice from Commissioner Jones. Okay, is that sufficient direction, Jose? And you follow up? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who provided comment tonight. Okay, we'll move on to, and there's no formal action on this item, I don't believe. It was just some feedback. Okay, we'll move on to item 6.
And so item number 6 is receive grand jury final report on the Florin County Water District and consider response to grand jury case titled Infighting in Turmoil, Drown Florin County Water District.
Christy?
Yeah.
Taking this
Good
one?
evening, commissioners. My name is Christy Graybill. I'm policy analyst here at LAFCO. I'm here tonight to bring you information that the Sacramento County Grand Jury released a report in June, and as mentioned already, for the Florin County Water District. And it has provided in the report that there's a recommendation specific to LAFCO. A little quick background is the grand jury received 2 complaints from regarding the FCWD board dysfunction and possible financial mishandling. The report cited that the board and management, district management, have had immense challenges of governance, operations, and long-term planning. Also in the report, it was identified that this district has not had an MSR ever conducted for the district, and that MSR would have been able to provide an outside evaluation to address the governance, service capacity, infrastructure, and efficiencies. Based on that finding, the grand jury did provide a recommendation that LAFCO needs to do an MSR and provided a deadline of that MSR of March 31st, 2025. The commission has been invited, however not required, but invited to respond to either the finding or the recommendation. And so staff has provided a draft of what that letter could look like. Staff recommends that agreeing to the need of doing an MSR, but requesting that the deadline of the MSR be pushed back, not from March, but to November. And the main reason for that is there's a number of recommendations in that report that identify documents that probably should have been included with the district beforehand, and that will help make our MSR more comprehensive and more efficient. And so with that, the letter requests that the deadline of that MSR be November rather than March. And Just a quick update for staff's perspective. We've heard that the district manager has since been dismissed, and so there's some moving parts with the district going on right now. So the recommendation tonight is to receive the report and consider responding to the grand jury report. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Christy. Any comments or questions from the commission members before we go to public comment? Seeing none, I'll go to public comment, starting with Cindy. We'll go Cindy, Tim, Kim, and then Loretta. Cindy.
I'm going to pass mine to Tim.
Okay, then Tim, you're up.
That's me. Oh. I'm hiding up here. I don't sit well.
Cindy, that means you're not going to speak, or you go after Tim?
I'm going to hold back for a couple.
Okay. Get your thoughts together.
Thank
Good
you
evening.
guys very much for coming together and trying to get us in the right direction. I've been asking for 2 solid years from different staff members with the county to come help us because we are so far off of what we needed to be. I forget, our council member, I've met with him at least twice. I was appointed to the board originally. Our office staff did not let us know when our dates were due 2 years ago for election, which we're back into that again. We also had the problem this year of our staff in the office not letting us know. I've been on the board for a little over 6 years. I have yet gotten any report what I've asked for. They tell me they give them to me. I have never seen them. I'm talking about the wells. I went out and took pictures of the wells that were all supposed to be up and running. And out of 9 wells, we had 4 that were running. We have had 1 that's been in question for as long as I've been around Florin, which I grew up there, which is the post office well. It's actually owned by the federal government. We are giving contract water to them, but they can leave any time. We have a lot of development in our area, but we keep getting told we can't go outside our area. I would like to know why we can't expand our area and bring our district a little larger to bring more revenue in. That's pretty much what I'd like to know. LAFCO, I appreciate you guys hearing us. There are a lot of concerned people about our district. Now we have a PFAS issue brought up in the last week, which we're working on also.
Okay.
I can see I'm over my time.
And yeah, you're over your time, but I will ask, Jose, can you respond to the question he had specifically about expanding their service area?
Sure. Basically, the ability to expand for any agency, be it city or special district, is contingent upon the ability of an agency to provide services that demonstrate that basically that they have the capacity and capability to do so, that they have sufficient revenue sources to offset the cost of expanding service without compromising the service for the existing customers. Florin specifically is surrounded by 2 other agencies. You've got the city of Sacramento to the north, you have County Water Agency to the east, and then on the west and on the south, you've got a private water company, I think it's CalAm. The ability of the district to be able to expand, you have to demonstrate that you can do so safely and without compromising service. And then in addition, it would also mean that you'd have to take away territory from one of these entities.
Well, there's a bunch of new development on the edge of our district right now, on the South Lot, Gardner, Florin Road district.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Now we'll go next to Kim. I'll do Kim, Loretta, and then Cindy.
Hello. This is my second time doing this, so hopefully I won't start to ramble. Hi, my name is Kim, and I am the wife of one of the board of directors. I'm also somebody who actually sits down and listens to these meetings, and I'm hoping that LAFCO can help us. The report that you got, spot on. There's nothing but turmoil in there. There's a lot of disrespect from the staff. There's a lot of disrespect from other board members. I believe the only way we're going to solve this problem and get this district back to where it's supposed to be, I think you just need to go in there and clean house. You need to get in there and get a staff in there that knows what they're doing. I know that they are working on getting a proper general manager in there, and we need your help. This is going to continue on until this stops. I know that there are board members that are going into the district and acting like they're employees, which they're not. They're a board director. They're supposed to oversee. They're not supposed to go in there and work. And this is going to continue until all of this stops. We need your help. Please. Again, we don't need board members in there working every day. If the staff can't do their job, we need to replace them. We need people to start respecting each other. And that's what, unfortunately, the staff does not respect the board. The board is their bosses. They're telling them, guiding them as to what to do. If the board can't get the information to properly go forward, then we're just sitting here spinning our wheels. We're going to be back here next week. We're going to be here next month, and this is going to continue on to be a problem. I don't know if this helps or not, but unfortunately, the grand jury was spot on. It's just nothing but turmoil, fighting. Nobody's respecting anybody, and until we get in there and basically clean house, throw everybody out of there, put a new staff in there, and get it back running the way it's supposed to, we're going to continue to have a problem.
Thank you.
That's my speech. Thank you very much for listening.
Commissioner Walton.
Yes, thank you for your words. And I live in a small town, and sometimes it is easy to have unprofessional staff and elected people and all of it. So I do feel your pain in trying to make things right. And I'm wondering what path could they pursue to move forward? Do you have any suggestions other than what you said earlier?
We would have to look at and study the issue entirely. Up to and including the feedback presented by the grand jury. We would have to verify whether some of the allegations are correct and the extent of whether they're correct. Options, again, LAFCO does not regulate the day-to-day operations, so they would be recommendations only. They could include findings relating to staff. Could also include a reorganization, which LAFCO has is within its jurisdiction. That would be either dissolving the district and annexing it to another provider. But that would be the extent of LAFCO's ability to do something. In terms of the day-to-day operations, the best we could do would be recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more public commenters, and I'll bring it back to the board. Loretta? Okay, so you'll wave. Cindy?
I'm Cindy Russell, and I'm on the board at Florin County Water. I was appointed back last August. Been trying to work on moving the district forward. I was aware of the grand jury report. And from what I can tell, if we don't get some help and try and move forward in this little district here and get this infighting resolved and so forth, I would suggest that we dissolve the district and move it into one of the other districts to take over and help us out. Because if we can't get any help to resolve what's going on now, then someone else needs to come in and just take it over. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Cindy. That concludes the public comment. Now I'll bring it back to the commission for further discussion.
Staff's recommendation really would be that we do pursue an MSR for this. The costs would probably end up being similar to the cost to the Del Paso Manor MSR, and that there are some similarities here. And request basically an independent review and judgment and recommendation from an outside expert in terms of how to proceed with the district. From a LAFCO standpoint, again, you could be looking at a reorganization, provided that you meet the thresholds specified in the government code, as it happened with Del Paso Manor. So if the findings are as such, then we at staff would prepare a package for you to consider. But that would be at the end of the road. We would need to determine the extent of the operational and governmental issues that the district is experiencing.
Thank you, Jose. And I'll just add on. The members of the public, the voters in that district, you really don't want LAFCO to weigh in or force something to happen, because sometimes it may be the kind of thing, be careful what you wish for. You may be stuck with someone handling your water services that ends up being much more expensive, may be something, an entity the ratepayers don't control directly. So it's always the preference to see if these districts can resolve their issues, certainly, but it has to start with the MSR process. So is that staff recommendation? I don't see that in the, okay.
Yeah, adopt staff's recommendation.
Okay. Then I will entertain a motion.
So move staff recommendation to respond to the grand jury, moving it from March to November for the MSR.
Second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Jones. Please vote.
And unanimous vote.
Okay, that will bring us to our next item.
And your next item is LAFCO 101, the information to the public on local agency formation commissions, authority and powers.
You have a lot of things to talk about in context now, right?
Yeah. Good evening, commissioners, members of the public, Mr. Chair. And actually, I do know that there are some folks statewide who are joining us through the live stream. So I apologize. We did not, at the staff level, anticipate that we would be going an hour into those two items, but it is what it is. So if you hung on and you're listening, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Jose Enriquez. I'm the Executive Officer for Sacramento LAFCO. We'll be covering essentially LAFCO 101. Which is just a broad overview of LAFCO's powers. This is part of your communication plan that you adopted a few months ago, which is basically try to have some informational sessions to folks relating to LAFCO's authority in general, but also some specific pieces. At the Special Districts Advisory Committee, we had an MSR 101 on municipal service reviews on what that is. And if there's more interest into that, we'd be happy to have more of those to discuss it. I know that we invited all of the agencies, both municipalities and special districts, to both at the MSR 101 as well as LAFCO 101. So if the presentation can be loaded up, please. I wanted to start off by thanking my staff for preparing the presentation. It's a lot better than I would have come up with. So,
Okay. Metro, if you could please queue up the presentation for item 7.
You don't have to? Okay. I was going to turn my laptop around and shut that window.
And while they're getting this ready, I discussed with council, so we're going to put off the closed session item to our next meeting.
Okay. So while that's being loaded up, I wanted to just kind of go over some things. LAFCO is inherently a very complex entity and often misunderstood. My usual joke is that it's not a comedy club, but it is an agency that's not well known. And in some cases, as the Sacramento Bee likes to describe LAFCO, is the obscure but powerful agency. But sometimes the powers are overblown. A lot of folks think that we have oversight of the districts, which LAFCO does, but only as it relates to the service boundaries. It doesn't relate to the day-to-day operations, as we've discussed, both for the cemetery districts and for Florin County Water Districts before you. And what ends up happening is that unless there's a nexus with the service area, there really isn't much that LAFCO can do as it relates to addressing some problems that the districts have. And as we discussed in the cemetery item, once LAFCO completes the process, and that's through the filing of what's called a certificate of completion, the train leaves the station. At that point, LAFCO's jurisdiction ends over that specific matter. There's no way that you're able to bring the issue back to LAFCO at that point, not without another application. And in some cases, it really can't be addressed at all. So the ability for you to be able to act on behalf of some districts is limited to just what can you do with the boundaries. So I'm hoping that the presentation moves up.
Can I ask you a question while we're waiting? Actually,
Sure.
Since our first speaker tonight. So take that for instance. That question. If there were to be a change, a de-incorporation, that would have to be initiated by the entity that controls that, for instance.
Exactly. So there are three different ways in which you can bring an item to the commission. One is through register voters, and there's a certain threshold that has to be met. It's specified in the government code. There are landowners, and then there's an agency. Any agency could apply to LAFCO for any change in boundaries, up to and including a district that's not related to them. I've seen, for example, a school district initiate the annexation of some parcels into a fire district. So any agency can do it. So an example that I can use as well is that the last incorporation effort for El Dorado Hills, it was the Board of Supervisors who actually applied to LAFCO to initiate the incorporation process. So any agency can initiate it. They would, of course, have to, provide sufficient information to LAFCO. LAFCO, under certain circumstances, can initiate a project on its own, but it's very limited. Your authority is essentially, I had to look it up just to make sure that I had it right. Your ability to initiate your own projects are limited to the consolidation of districts or of a district, the dissolution of a district, a merger, which that's colloquially is used as a kind of a combination of two districts, but the reality is that the government code has a very specific definition of a merger. A merger is essentially bringing a special district under the control of a city, even though it's not incorporated into a city. And there are special provisions for that. You have to be 70% of the service area of the district has to be within the city. But essentially, the city becomes the ex officio, the city council becomes the ex officio members. Yay, we got a presentation. Let me finish these thoughts. The establishment of a subsidiary district, the formation of new district or districts, a reorganization that includes any of the changes that we've just talked about, the dissolution of an inactive district, and there's a specific definition for that, and then the dissolution of a district pursuant to essentially a process in which the California Department of Water refers the matter to LAFCO to dissolve a district, but that would be an inactive district as well. So in some very limited cases, the state can bring issues to LAFCO, and I know of a few counties where that has happened. Here we haven't had that that brought to our attention yet. All of our water districts are active to some extent. And activity, by the way, is defined as not filing financial paperwork over a certain number of years. So it can get very complicated very quickly.
I didn't quite hear in any of those scenarios. How do you take away a certain portion of a city and revert it back to unincorporated county area? And that's,
That actually would have to be, and actually to the question of the person who spoke in public comment, that actually LAFCO can't do that. Either the county applies to detach that item from the city, or the city itself applies to detach that portion of the county. So it has to be an external party that brings it to LAFCO. LAFCO can initiate. We can broker. We can negotiate, assist in the negotiations, but ultimately to actually change the boundary,
right,
it has to be a third party that brings it.
Both in that scenario, I think both parties would need to agree.
Correct.
To that. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
I won't belabor that anymore. I know we're already delayed here.
Well, and actually, there's a very specific quirk in the law that basically a district can request that LAFCO to terminate a proceeding relating to an annexation into their district. And a city can petition LAFCO to terminate proceedings relating to a detachment from the city. So if, for example, the county says, we'll use Del Paso because it's already been brought up. Let's say the county applies to LAFCO saying, hey, detach Del Paso from the city of Sacramento. The city of Sacramento can come back to LAFCO and adopt a resolution and say, hey, stop the proceedings. It's not a veto.
Right.
You still have the discretion to continue it. But the government code says you have to give it great weight.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so LAFCO 101. Again, Jose Enriquez, I'm the executive officer. I'll introduce myself in a little bit. But the objective here is to educate the public on LAFCO, to provide a general understanding of the state law and LAFCO policies, understand our role in Sacramento County, and identify state law responsibilities and trends. And while these all sound pretty clear, I want to stress the fact that with LAFCO, things can get complicated very quickly. And so each of these little dimensions have subdimensions and caveats that really it's only with speaking with LAFCO staff would you be able to kind of parse out everything. But generally speaking, these are the things that we want to discuss here in this workshop. So the history, essentially post World War II, California encountered a huge influx of new people. And as a result, a lot of agencies were being created left and right, and a lot of existing agencies were annexing lands left and right. And it got to the point where it was discovered that basically you had quote-unquote jigsaw governments, where if you were to look at a map, some maps didn't make any sense. There's, for example, I'm going to pick on them because why not? In El Dorado County, there's a water district that it looks like somebody took a portion of the map, they drew, and then they took a shotgun and then blasted a bunch of holes through it. But that's kind of the expansion that was going on. It was very ad hoc, not uncoordinated. And so the Governor Brown wanted to basically create, then Governor Brown, Pat Brown, wanted to create some kind of method to the madness. And so they created a commission to look at metropolitan problems, that's what they called it, and came up with recommendations. The recommendation actually was to have one statewide agency overseeing the boundaries of all local governments. The California State Association of Counties and the League of California Cities said, hey, wait a second, what's good for MODOC is not good for LA, it's not good for Sacramento, it's not good for San Francisco. And so eventually the compromise was, we'll create a LAFCO in every county. And that way you all have the same state law to implement, but you will take into account local circumstances. And in our system of government, both federal and state and local, there's always a checks and balance. And so the governing board wasn't an independent governing board, but instead they were to be members of existing agencies within the county who would best know the circumstances of the county. So the legislature legally has the right to be able to regulate boundaries, but they delegated that to LAFCO. And the governing statute for LAFCOs is Cortese-Knox Hertzberg Act, and it's the government code 56,000. And 56,000, if you want a good read because you have insomnia, I would recommend that you take a look at it. But the nice thing about CKH is that it's written specific enough to provide you with guidance and in terms of what the legislature feels is important, but it gives you enough discretion to be able to accommodate that law and use it for your local circumstances. So I am not aware of any other section of the government code that actually strikes that balance fairly well. And if there's the California Association of LAFCOs has an executive officer listserv email system, and we confer with each other all the time. And for some members, they think that the law is too vague. For other members, they think it's too specific. And so that tells me that basically we're kind of struck the right balance. But it is a guiding document, and so far, it seems to be working. The thing that I want to stress to folks listening in is that LAFCO is essentially a state agency, but it's with local control. Obviously, we have locally elected officials, so we're not part of the state agency. We're not part of the county structure. We're not part of any city structure. It's an independent body, so it's a hybrid entity, and it creates it's able to create a balance of different interests, because obviously things can get in conflict, as we saw in the previous two agenda items. A lot of things come before you, some esoteric, some very specific, but it becomes a balance of values. And so your charge is essentially to oversee 7 cities, all with their own objectives and priorities. And then here for Sacramento County, we have 71 independent special districts, and they run the gamut. They fire, park, cemetery, reclamation districts, maintenance districts, community services districts. Some of them are dependent, some of them are independent. And for folks who don't know the difference between the two, an independent district is essentially a district in which folks within the service area elect their own board of directors. A dependent district is basically somebody else is the board of directors. It might be the county board of supervisors, or they might be appointed by the different jurisdictions that serve on it. For example, Sac Sewer, which is the wastewater entity here in Sacramento, they are technically a dependent special district, because the members of the board are not independently elected. They serve on an existing board, and they govern the operations of that board. SMUD, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, is an independent district because people can elect their own directors based on a sub-district or of the SMUD service area. So LAFCO goals. As I indicated in the objective piece, you were charged with 4 broad goals, and they're the preservation of open space and agricultural resources, the discouragement of sprawl, the ensure the efficient extension and provision of public services, and promote the orderly growth and development. And while these goals sound lofty, the reality for folks in this area, and as you've seen it here, they are competing interests. Sometimes they're in direct conflict of each other. Sometimes the orderly formation of government will mean that basically it might mean sprawl, and it might mean that we don't preserve open space and ag sources. And sometimes the preservation of open space gets in the way of ensuring the efficient provision of services. So these are not ranked. These are the 4 goals that the legislature has given you. You as a board need to essentially weigh the merits of each individual proposal up against these broad goals and try to strike a balance. And they are not, like I said, they are not ranked. For some proposals, we get a lot of this, you're going to need to preserve open space. Well, that might get in the way of these other goals as well. So these are all direct conflict. They're not sometimes an action before you only calls for one of those missions to be activated. Sometimes you get 3 of them that get activated, and if you got more than 2, there's probably going to be some conflict among them. So, so the public just needs to understand that it's a heavy charge, and it's very difficult for commissioners to weigh and keep a balance of those 4 goals. They are broken down in Government Code 56-668. Again, if you're looking for a cure for your insomnia, that actually these 4 broad missions are actually broken down into bite-sized pieces. So we try to address those in our staff reports relating to proposals. They're usually summarized in the staff report narrative, but it will always be in attachment A. You will always have a table in which we break down all of the factors in 56, 668, and from a staff level, we evaluate whether this is consistent or inconsistent with that specific section of the government code. So composition, and we talked about the we talked about the local aspect of it, and as I indicated, the composition of LAFCO is locally elected officials. We have 2 members from the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. They are appointed by the board as part of their committee assignments. And we have 2 members who are selected by the independent special districts for all of the independent special districts located within County of Sacramento. They select their members, and it's actually through an election. So LAFCO runs a nomination process. Those folks who are nominated are put on a ballot, and then the special districts as a whole vote on who they want their representatives to be on LAFCO. Then we have one member who is appointed by the mayor of the city of Sacramento, and it's a member of the city council of the city of Sacramento. And then among the 6 cities, the 6 remaining cities, they rotate. They have an adopted schedule in which they rotate the seat for the other city seat on LAFCO. And then these 6 regular members then appoint a member of the public to serve on the commission. And this person cannot be an elected or an appointed official of any jurisdiction within Sacramento County. So it has to be a regular member of the public who serves on LAFCO. And each of these 5 categories has an alternate who can vote on behalf of the regular members if they're recused or absent. And I want to make it clear that, for example, the alternate for the public member might be in the audience, but if you have a special district representative absent, that alternate for the public cannot be a regular member or a voting member at that point, because they have to be within their own specific category. And it's specific to the 2 cities. There are actually 2 alternates for cities, one specific to the city of Sacramento and one specific to the other 6 cities within the county. And then there's LAFCO staff, and that would be the 3 of us here. We serve the commission by providing accurate and comprehensive information. We review all of the relevant codes and laws, and our goal is essentially to ensure that you have enough information to come up with an informed decision. So we try to strike that balance of providing to you relevant information without bogging you down with a lot of detail that may not be germane to the project. But as LAFCO staff, we process proposals consistent with Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg and local procedures and policies. We prepare the staff report, we implement commission decisions, and it's not up there, but we also conduct municipal service reviews as well in-house. This was added by my staff. Fun facts, we all live within Sacramento County. I myself have been in the LAFCO world for 21 years, actually. I was a policy analyst for Yolo County. I was executive officer for El Dorado County for 15 and a half years. And now I've been serving here in Sacramento County for 3 years. It was actually my 3rd year anniversary a couple weeks ago. Not that I'm looking to do this, but I've been told that I get a free sandwich if I get one more county. So probably not going to happen. At least that's my wish. But, then we have the senior member of my policy analyst, Desiree Fox. She's a former county planner with 6 years of experience, and she's been with LAFCO. You're coming up to your 3rd year, aren't you? Oh, no, 2 years. 2 years. And then our newbie, Christy Grabo, she has 18 years of planning experience from all over the place, and she's been with the county she's been with LAFCO for less than a year. I think October is your anniversary. So happy to have them here, and like I said, they're the ones responsible for this snazzy presentation. So LAFCO funding, because usually we get that question. Essentially, we have 4 categories of funding, one much larger than the others. So the first allocation of funding is any revenues that we save from this fiscal year that we carry over into the next fiscal year, also known as a fund balance. The second one is applicant fees. We charge on a time and materials basis, so we keep track of the time. Our fee schedule currently calls for a $5,000 deposit, but again, it's a deposit. At the end of a project, we add up our hours. If they're under that $5,000, we refund the remainder. If they're over, we bill them for the remainder. So the third one would be any interest revenue that we get from having money in the bank, quote unquote. But the largest revenue is really from contributions from the state, from the county agencies. So the county of Sacramento provides a third of the agency contributions on their own. The cities are responsible for the second third, and the independent special districts are split the last third. Now, the city of Sacramento pays for half of the city's share. And SMUD, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, pays for half of the special district share. So it can also be said that essentially the county pays a third, the city of Sacramento pays a sixth. The 6 other cities split their sixth shares proportionally based upon their revenue levels. And then the 62 others, SMUD pays a sixth. And then the 62 something independent special districts split the last sixth proportionally based upon their revenues. So the governing documents, you actually have two. One mentioned earlier, the Cortesian-Oxford Act, Government Code $56,000, or 56,000, 56,000. Sorry, budget. Now we're talking government code. So 56,000, and that's applicable for all LAFCOs throughout the state. They address general provisions for the commission. They specify the selection process, the powers, your authority, and then it goes into the procedures of certain actions that you take. While we call it processing and application, the reality is that each one has its own quirks. So an annexation procedure is very much different from a dissolution procedure, and which is very much different from a consolidation procedure. But the government code has all of that. And then the government code also allows you to adopt local policies that basically takes the general direction from the government code, and you can define it specific to here. So an example of that, if you recall, we had adopted a local policy relating to the out-of-agency service agreements that get brought to you, that you specified that LAFCO is the one that defines whether or not an agency is exempt from those procedures. So that's specific to here. Another one that's specific is as it relates to the destruction of documents. They have certain expiration dates that we administratively are allowed to destroy. That the government code just says that after a period of time, you can dispense with certain documents. Your policies actually specify which type of policy you can, which type of paperwork or documents you can destroy based upon the age of that document. So these are specific to Sacramento County. I don't know the actual number, but other LAFCOs I know have specific policies that's just applicable to them. And I want to stress that because I usually get calls most likely from some disaffected party in another county, and they're asking me, what would you do? And I typically say, you're going to have to talk to that executive officer because they know the local policies. I don't know. I know these. I don't know theirs. And so while we have a governing document, the reality is that we also need to look at your local policies to see how we're going to process those. A policy, for example, that's specific to Sacramento County that are not present in the other two counties that I worked for is that you will not take a sphere of influence amendment at the same time that you'll be hearing an application that requires a sphere of influence amendment. So they have to be taken up at two separate hearings. That's specific to Sacramento County. So these are, again, the examples. Another example of your local policy, when we just talked about it a couple items ago on the agenda. That's the Municipal Service Review communication. And the process. The government code just says you need to do municipal service reviews. You've actually adopted a project plan that says these are the project plan, these are the MSRs that we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do them. So the independence of LAFCOs, you are, as commissioners, you are required to exercise your independent judgment on behalf of the public. So not from your home agency, but what you think is best for the public here. And there have been instances in which a elected official in their home agency votes one way, they come to LAFCO and they vote a different way. So a lot of the public, there's a misconception that number one, that however you vote in your home agency is how you're going to vote for LAFCO. That's not necessarily the case. Again, you're supposed to be using your independent judgment. And the other thing, too, that we get is that commissioners are inherently having a conflict of interest because they're serving on their home agency, and here's this proposal that affects their home agency. That's a conflict. It's not. The government code, by having the composition of LAFCO set up in such a way that you have the county, the city, and independent special districts specific to Sacramento County, and the public member, they basically said there's no conflict here. You were created this way. That's not an inherent conflict. You might have a financial conflict, but just by the simple fact that you're an elected official from another agency and serve on LAFCO, that's not a conflict at all. You make the final decisions, and those decisions cannot be appealed to other administrative bodies. So that's another question that I get. Hey, I don't like that LAFCO decision. I'm going to appeal it to the Board of Supervisors. No, you can't. They don't oversee LAFCO. Again, LAFCO is an independent agency. If you're looking for some kind of adjudicated relief, you actually need to go to the courts and sue us. Please don't. But that's the only way to remedy a LAFCO decision is a lawsuit. I, as an executive officer, I'm accountable to you and to the statutes. And so I basically, on matters in which we cannot administratively call the shots, we have to bring it back to you. You have an adopted MSR project plan that had a specific order, and so you've got some folks who want to move up the municipal service review up from the schedule. That was your decision. We can't do it at an administrative level. You have to tell us about that. Other aspects, those can be delegated to the executive officer, and the government code allows for that. And then you can also adopt local policies. So what do we do? Again, as I indicated in my presentation earlier, your jurisdiction basically begins and ends with the adjustment of service boundaries of local governments. So you do not have a way of being able to look at the day-to-day operations. You can review them on an MSR, but you can't say, hey, general manager, you're not complying with your district's master plan. You need to correct course. That's outside of LAFCO's jurisdiction. So the changes in boundaries that we typically talk about are incorporations, district formations, dissolutions, disincorporations. And the difference between the two is dissolution is specific to a special district, dependent or independent, and disincorporation specifically to cities. And for anybody who's wondering, if you want a cocktail party fun fact, the last disincorporation was in the 1940s with the city of Cabazon. So long time, no city has ever been disincorporated. We've had cities that have gotten into financial problems, but the LAFCO never felt that it got to the point where the city needed to be disincorporated. Annexations, detachments, outside user agreements or out-of-agency service agreements, spheres of influences and MSRs. You can activate latent powers. Latent powers basically is a service that you can that you've been authorized to provide, but you're not actively providing. Now the government code says that to activate it, you need to come to LAFCO. Now, I want to stress that this is specific to special districts. Under the California Constitution, cities have a very broad power of municipal services, and they can choose not to do it anymore, or they can activate it at any time. It does not require a LAFCO action. So in the cemetery district, in the cemetery discussion that we were having earlier in the agenda, the city could just say, well, we're not currently providing cemetery services, but now we bought a plot of land, we'll have a cemetery there, and we'll provide it. They can do that outside of LAFCO. The consolidation of cities or special districts and mergers. And the mergers are basically a district is dissolved and the city takes over. Sometimes we get very clunky with these terms. For example, we have got 2 water districts, Sacramento Suburban and Sonoma Water District, that are currently studying the issue of becoming one entity, and we use a clunky term named combination. That's because there's no legal definition to combination. There's a legal definition for merger. There's a legal definition for consolidation. There's a legal definition for reorganization. And so we have to use terms that are outside of the legal process because those boards have not actually taken action that they're going to do reorganization versus consolidation. And we don't want to get, as a staff level, we don't want to get ahead of those boards before they make those decisions. So we use a term that's not legally defined. So sometimes LAFCO, we can trip ourselves up. As indicated earlier, of those powers that you see there, the ones that LAFCO can initiate on its own are district formations, dissolutions, consolidations, and sphere of influences and MSRs. All of the other ones, and mergers. All of the other ones somebody has to come to LAFCO. It has to be a third party. And as I indicated, it has to be either the landowners, a registered voters, or a public agency.
Excuse me, through the chair. This is probably an ignorant question, but if a county or city wanted to change their charter, would LAFCO be involved with that?
No.
Thank you.
There have been some, again, fun facts. LA and Orange County actually adjusted the county lines. And that actually went through LAFCO only to clean up the boundaries of the service providers, because obviously if you change the lines, you might affect a city or a special district. But the counties themselves are the ones who did it. So it was actually from a LAFCO nerd standpoint, it was actually a pretty impressive thing to watch, that all those agencies worked together, 2 different counties, 2 different LAFCOs, all the affected cities and special districts, to make that change in boundary happen. And that's because basically the boundary was defined by a river. The river shifted over time, and so now you have to adjust the lines accordingly. Yeah. Like I said, it can get complicated real quick, and from a LAFCO standpoint, these are the things that, it's the reason why I've been around for 20 years. I love this stuff. So the types of projects that we see, annexations typically, it's the inclusion, attachment, or addition of territory to a city or special district. We use the term annexation, but in reality, sometimes it involves a reorganization, because especially for city annexations, it might also require the detachment of special districts, because the city will take over that service. So we generally speak about annexations, but typically on the titles for projects, you'll see reorganization instead, and that's because we're doing more than one action. That's what a reorganization is you're taking more than one action: detachment, annexations, etc. Spheres of influence, SOIs. That's basically, I'm going to actually take these in the opposite order in which they're listed. Now, in time, sphere of influence came before MSRs. But to understand the modern concept, you need to look at the MSR before you look at the SOI. So what happened is that when the legislature created LAFCOs, it was specific to, hey, make these boundaries normal, make them make sense. What they were finding is that LAFCOs really didn't have enough guidance. At the time, it was called the Knox-Nisbet Act. They didn't have enough guidance within the government code to do what the legislature wanted them to do it. So they said, okay, what you need to have some kind of guiding planning document, and that's what they created, an SOI in the 1970s. And so So the SOI requirement came about, but some LAFCOs really were not taking the SOI requirement seriously, I should say. And there wasn't much planning behind the SOI. So then in 2000, the legislature, when it reorganized the LAFCO law into what's now the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, they put in the municipal service review component. And here's why. Essentially, what an MSR does is it's a snapshot in time. It takes a look at how an agency is currently providing services. And when it does that inventory, it uses that data to extrapolate what should happen to the agency over time. And that's the sphere of influence. Now, there's a misconception that an SOI is always positive, that an agency will always expand. But in the LAFCO world, there are actually four different types of SOIs. There's what we call a positive SOI, which means that a district should expand. And that's usually indicative that the MSR found that, hey, the district is healthy. It can expand just fine. It can do so without compromising the service. And it's running pretty well. So it's a positive SOI. A second type of SOI is what's called concurrent, which means an agency is doing just fine, but it really has no capacity to expand. We'll have it concurrent to their service boundary. So when you look at a map and you're looking at a district, for example, Florin County Water District, their SOI is currently concurrent because basically you're not expanding, you're not contracting, you're remaining the same. And that's what a concurrent SOI is. You have a negative sphere in which you may find that there's, within a service area, the district is currently not providing services to that area, and there might be another entity that would probably provide service to it better. And so you basically say this land within the service area should be detached. So that's why it's not negative as in the put down. It just basically means we're going to reduce your service area over time. Now, you can do that and make that determination as an SOI because, again, the SOI is a planning tool. However, you cannot initiate detachments. So you still have to have some third party coming in to say we're going to detach these lands. In my previous life in another county, we found that basically an agency was not, they were collecting a special tax from a certain portion of their service area, but they were not providing services to that area. And so we as LAFCO staff determined that, hey, it's not fair for these folks to be paying into the kitty, but they're not getting any services in return. We should have a negative sphere. And so that was the staff recommendation. And again, you find that through the MSR process. And then a zero sphere is basically this agency should be dissolved. You're basically indicating this agency as a whole should no longer be in business, and it should dissolve. And so the dissolution can happen. Again, that is one of your authorized powers. You can initiate a dissolution, or a third party can come in and ask for the dissolution. But before you take any action, it has to be consistent with the SOI, and that's the importance of the MSR. So the MSR begets the SOI, and the SOI begets future LAFCO actions. You cannot take an action that is not consistent with the SOI. That's very specific in the government code. As I indicated earlier, CKH is usually provides guidance without being mandating certain things. That is an actual mandate. It's one of the few ones in the government code. You cannot take an action that's not consistent with an agency's SOI. The other one, if you want to know what's a specific one, is you do not have land use authority. That's specific to the county. That's specific to the cities. So you may, from a petition standpoint, say that a district can't or a city can't expand services, or the proposed project exceeds the city's or the special district's ability to provide services, so therefore you're going to deny the project. That's an indirect land use, but you cannot, and that's allowed. That case law has established that you can't, your decisions can have an indirect land use. What you cannot do is say, well, we don't like the 2 hotels are going to be there. We want more housing, and so you're going to change the zoning to this land to, from a hotel hospitality to housing. That you cannot do. And so there's some misconception in the public that LAFCO can dictate what goes into a land. No, you can't. You're very much limited. So now we're going to walk through the LAFCO process. Again, I want to stress that things get complicated very, very quickly. We're just going to touch upon the broad portions of the LAFCO process. These steps you always have to go through regardless of the petition, but again, each type of action has its own specific nuance that staff has to take into account. So we're going to walk through these. Generally speaking, there are 5 phases of the LAFCO process. The first one is the application initiation. And that usually has, again, typically brought in by a third party. That would be landowners, registered voters, or an agency. And we require a lot of information up front. And that's listed there. We have an applicant tab on our website that basically walks you through all the forms that we need and all the materials that we need for LAFCO staff to start processing an application. In addition, when it's a landowner or a registered voter petition that comes to LAFCO, we need to establish whether or not you have the ability to initiate a project. If you're a landowner, we need to establish that you truly are the landowner. If you are a registered voter, there's a certain threshold that you have to meet. It has to be a certain percentage of the total registered voters in the area. And so we confer with the assessor's office and the elections office to kind of determine whether or not these the petitioners can bring this action to LAFCO. So there's a certificate of sufficiency that's issued when they meet that threshold. And then we launched the ABA process, also known as the property tax process or the ad valorem process. That is an important piece that we cannot bypass. So we have to go through the assessor's office to tell us what the assessed value of the land is in the property. We ask, the government code says the auditor controller in Sacramento County. The auditor controller's office is part of the Department of Finance. So we ask the Department of Finance to basically break down who gets a portion of that property tax dollar. And then once that's settled in, if the petitioner requests property taxes to be part of the LAFCO process, it goes to the Board of Supervisors for them to come up with a brand new formula for property taxes. So in the issue beforehand with the Fair Oaks Cemetery District, the process went through the ABA process, but Fair Oaks Cemetery was not added as a recipient of property taxes to the newly expanded area, and that's why they're in the situation that they're in. But the key thing here that we'd like to bring in is that all of these have time limits. The assessor has 30 days. Department of Finance has 45 days. 30 of those 45 days are concurrent with the assessor. But they had those time limits in which they have to issue those reports back to LAFCO. And then those reports are then forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. And the Board of Supervisors at that point has 60 days to come up with a new formula.
Was that a mistake or by design?
On the Fair Oaks piece?
Yes.
We can't make that determination. That's from the 80s. If you look at the documents, it sounded like the county was not supportive unless the district chooses not to have property taxes. The district does not appear to have agreed to that. So we can't determine unless I go back in time. I'm not able to tell you whether that was by design or a mistake. So that's it. But the one thing that we usually with city annexations, ad valorem is always on the table, and we encourage applicants to actually start having that negotiation process outside of LAFCO, because the reason being is that those 60 days. It's specific to Revenue Tax 99. Again, if you want another, sleeping guide, Revenue Tax 99 and Revenue Tax 99.1 specify what the process is for the ad valorem process. And those 60 days I cannot change. And if those 60 days expire and we have no property tax formula adopted by the Board of Supervisors, the petition dies. Period. I have no discretion. the applicant has to go back to square one and we begin the process again. So typically, in fact, we met with a special district this afternoon, and they were considering using property tax revenues as their funding, part of their funding formula for an annexation that they're proposing. I indicated you need to start those negotiations right now, because property taxes are capped by Prop 13, so the property tax dollar is already defined, and different agencies get a portion of that property tax dollar. It's a zero-sum game. If you want to add a new district that gets a portion of that dollar, it means everybody else loses something. And those negotiations can get very complex very quickly. And no offense to the supervisors here, but the reality is, to get on your calendar, 60 days is not enough. In some respects, you need to have that negotiation basically settled before you come to LAFCO. That way you don't bump up against that clock. And the reason why I also specify this process, we can't bypass it from a LAFCO standpoint. And Cortese-Nauturtburg is very specific. I cannot set a date for a proposal to be brought to the commission without an AB 8 resolution. So absent that, I cannot set a date. And that's, again, one of those very definitive portions of Cortese-Nauturtburg. And that's why I cover this piece, exciting as it is. But that's because, and that's specific to all LAFCOs. Without an AB 8 resolution, or you cannot set a date. So at the end of the AB 8 process, LAFCO staff, and actually during the AB 8 and at the end of the AB 8 process, LAFCO staff is actively analyzing the project and making sure that we have all of the answers that we need, not only for Government Code 56668, but also answer any questions that may be unresolved. Some applicants, when they file their application, they may think it's complete, but when we start diving deeper, we realize, oh my God, this is not consistent with this. And so we need to ask for additional materials, additional clarification, just to ensure we get to that goal point that I specified earlier, provide you with enough information to make an informed decision. Once we have everything that we need, then I issue what's called a certificate of filing, which indicates this is the date in which you will be heard by the commission. Two things that folks should know. First is that the government code errs on the side of a person or an applicant having their day in court. So while counties and cities and some special districts can move items to off calendar or to put it off indefinitely, LAFCO has no such discretion. You can continue an item up to 90 days, but it's at the end of those 90 days, you need to come to a decision, one way or the other. And so that's one important factor to note. And the second important factor to note is that, again, the MSR component, why it's also important, is that the MSR provides information to the commission about how the agencies are working and how they're doing, how they're conducting business, as background information that you can then also use to apply to this specific project before you. So if you find that on the MSR that basically says, hey, there seems to be some issue with governance, that's absolutely important for you to consider that as part of the LAFCO application. So the MSR provides information, background information, without being specific to a project. And then you can apply that information specific to this project. Then you get to the public hearing and reconsideration. So at the public hearing, you essentially weigh the petition, weigh it against the factors in 5668, weigh it against the four broad mandates that the legislature has given you, and you render a decision. You can accept the proposal as given to you by an applicant, but the government code also allows you to modify it if you feel it's necessary. So you might find that maybe the ability to provide services to an area is going to be too onerous or too expensive or infeasible based on all the information at your disposal, and you may modify the proposal that you're going to annex only a portion, not all of it. Or it could be that you have a project that essentially creates an island, a service island, and it excludes certain parcels, and you're saying this makes no sense from an orderly boundary. So we're going to modify the proposal to also include this area that you've excluded. So you can modify it. Once you approve it, you can actually your actions are you either deny it, you approve it unconditionally, or you approve it with conditions. And as long as I'm your executive officer, you will always approve it with conditions, because the condition that I always put in there is that the applicant will pay all their LAFCO fees. And so I always have to keep an eye on the budget. So that's a condition that all applicants will be responsible to do. And then the applicant has 12 months from that date to meet all of those conditions. So it's not effective immediately. They still have to comply with all the conditions. You have the discretion to give them more time if it's warranted. From a LAFCO staff standpoint, if a condition is contingent upon some other party that the applicant does not control, and that other party is not acting, but the applicant has done everything in their power to try to get them to act, but they still have failed, I think that's out of their control. And so my recommendation would be to give them more time. If the applicant is required to do certain actions and they don't do them, then at that point I'm not very merciful at all. I basically say no, you deny it. And if those 12 months expire, that basically means that the petition, the decision that you've made, is null and void, and the application fails. Now there are two aspects beyond the approval hearing that you need to keep into account, and this is again under our system of checks and balances that we have in the U.S. and in California. Any person within a county can ask the commission to reconsider a decision that they've made, but they have to provide new evidence or facts that you did not consider. So it's a very high bar, because we try to be as thorough as possible here at the staff level. But they do have that authority. And if they provide new or different facts, again, the government code gives them they can err on the side of getting their day in court. You have the discretion of either denying reconsideration or approving. And if you approve the reconsideration, we basically we go through the approval process again. The applicant doesn't start from stage one. We basically we pick it up at the commission hearing standpoint, but that's something that you can do. Now, there's also what's called the conducting authority. Some of us will also refer to the protest hearing. They're synonymous. They're the same thing. But basically, the conducting authority says that if you do not have 100% landowner consent, and that's typically applies to registered voter petitions or agency petitions. Presumably, when it's a landowner petition, they have 100% consent to bring it to you. But for the other two pieces, registered voter, agency application, most likely you do not have 100% landowner consent. And the landowner consent obviously is in the affected territory, right? They have the ability to protest the commission action if you approve it. So if you approve the petition, we open up what's called a protest period in which landowners and registered voters can protest the LAFCO action. They're tallied differently. And if they happen to be landowner voter, like let's say, a couple who owns a house, they can file a protest as a landowner, they can file a protest as a registered voter, or they can file it as both. But the tallies are kept separate. And at the end of the protest period, we count how many protests are received. If it's a majority of voters or landowners protest the action, you terminate the proceedings and the annexation or the reorganization fails. If it's 50% or more, then I'm sorry, majority is 50% or more. If it's less than 25% of registered voters or landowners, then the commission decision stands. If it's between 25 and 50%, then it goes to an election. And then the registered voters get to decide the matter on a regular election. I usually describe this as the government code equivalent of the Star Trek alien that makes you go mad if you look at it, because it gets, again, very complicated very quickly. And as you can saw, I got tripped up already in terms of percentages. But it is a very, and I was part of a working group to kind of streamline these provisions, and they're better, but it doesn't mean that they're perfect. But in generally speaking, the conducting authority falls under that. So if you have 50% or more, the commission decision is overturned. Less than 25%, the commission decision stands. 25 to 50%, it goes to an election. On the registered voter tally, that's pretty easy. Number of registered voters, percentage of protest, boom. On the landowner voter side, you actually have to look at the assessed value, and it gets proportional to the total assessed value of the land. So again, it gets complicated very quickly, and I'm surprised I haven't gone insane.
But to be very specific, so if one area is going to have a project and a majority of those voters submitted a protest, but it's actually the entire jurisdiction that you look at, not just the area.
No, it's just the annexed area.
Just the annexed
Just the
area.
annexed area.
Okay.
So people who are already within the district do not get to vote, do not get to participate. They can, of course, this is a public process. They can as part of the approval hearing, they can submit comment. They can provide public comment for you to weigh. But in terms of this phase, it's only the people that are within the annexation territory
And
that get to weigh
sometimes
in.
this happens between changing districts with like school districts as well.
School districts have their own process. They're not part of the LAFCO jurisdiction, thank God. That's part of the county education, county of education. They head those things. Okay. We're talking independent special districts, dependent special districts, and cities. The county of Sacramento does not go through the LAFCO process unless they have a county service area, and then that is subject to LAFCO.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarification.
And then the last phase is the completion. We basically, if everything has been filed appropriately, up to and including CEQA, certain actions require you to have some type of environmental determination. And in fact, the only one that comes to mind that does not need an environmental determination is an MSR. Even the sphere of influence requires some type of environmental review. So LAFCO staff has to do the appropriate filings for that. Once the applicant completes all their conditions of approval, we file what's called a certificate of completion, and that is sent to all the affected agencies. And the certificate of completion basically will have the effective date. You will note on your resolutions that you've seen already, where you approve an annexation, it says that the project will be, I think, 5 business days from the filing of the certificate of completion. That actually is a courtesy to the affected agencies, so that when we file it, we immediately notice everybody. They have 5 days to basically prepare for that change of jurisdiction. And a reason, for example, that's very important is, let's say, an annexation to a city, and the city has its own police department. That's when the sheriff knows, hey, this parcel will be outside my jurisdiction now, and the city police chief can say, oh, this will be part of my jurisdiction as of this date. So we give them a little bit of time to prepare for that change of jurisdiction. We file the application, and we close it, and that's the train leaving the station. After that, there's no way to revisit the project. What LAFCO does informally, we can be a consultant, and in fact, I attend. I can't tell you how many public meetings of other special districts that I've attended to basically be able to provide information about certain actions or questions that might come up. We try to be an honest broker, which basically we try to resolve policy issues before they become lawsuits. We can be facilitators in case of issues that come up. So, for example, the consultant and facilitator role on that Del Paso park, we've provided input to the city, we've provided input to the county, and we've tried essentially to establish a dialogue about what that would look like. And then educator, which is present ideas and options for results and research. And we try to provide agencies with their options for what to do from a jurisdictional standpoint. And then we have some other roles that we take on. We have a statewide partnership. I mentioned that we have the California Association of LAFCOs. Because there's one of us in every county, we're a very small family, and we confer with each other a lot. We learn from each other's mistakes. I know that in my 20 years, there's certain procedures that I haven't processed on my own, and so then I speak with my colleagues who actually have done something like that, and pick their brain, and vice versa. People call me up. I used to have a council of elders, quote unquote. They did not appreciate that name, of established DOs who have been around the block for a number of years, and I would definitely pick their brain, and I called them a council because I would call one differently and I would rotate it. That way I wasn't picking on the same person at the same time. When the last person, actually I still have one council of elder member left, but when the second to the last person retired, I said, who am I going to go to now when I need guidance? And his response was, well, you're the grizzled veteran now.
There you go.
Ask yourself. Like, oh, no. So there's that, and there's also local partnership. I do try to introduce myself to the local agencies. When I came here, I made a note to introduce myself to key members of county staff with the cities. I'm making my way through the special districts. If I haven't made it to you, I'm sorry, I apologize. But it is my intent to basically just introduce myself and make our staff available to them for questions and dialogue. And we try to work with with agencies that accomplish their goals. They're governed by and elected officials too. They have their priorities, and as best as we can, we try to work towards implementing what they like to see within their agencies. Obviously, sometimes that might be in conflict, so I can't promise a kumbaya moment at each and every time. But I try to be an honest broker and just kind of, say how it is based on how I see it, and if their preferred path can't be taken, maybe there are other options that we can pursue. And that concludes my presentation. Right. So thank you, everyone. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or that you may have about anything that I've said.
Thank you. I think as we saw, I was transferred duties of chair. So Clerk, is there any public comments? All right, then I will now turn it over to commissioners for questions. So go ahead and press the button and I'll pull you up in order. Commissioner Little.
Well, I just want to thank members of the public that are here and online for being here for such a long time, but for sticking it out through this LAFCO 101, and to Jose for doing this, and for Desiree and Christy for putting that nice presentation together. This is, if I can not speak out of turn for the rest of the commissioners here, this is exactly what, when we created the communication plan, what we had in mind, is presenting this to people so that there is a better understanding of what LAFCO is, and that LAFCO is not a hammer for special districts. It's to help them and to help them do their jobs and be more effective. So thank you. I really appreciate what you've done.
Thank you.
Commissioner Walton.
Oh, yeah. I agree. This was wonderful, and I'd like to get a hard copy of it.
Sure will.
All right.
And for those who are joining us either on the broadcast or on the live stream, it actually is going to be archived on YouTube. If you'd like to get a copy of the recording, you can contact here at staff. Phone number 916-736 I don't dial it, so 2864. Or at their website, as you can see on saclafco.org, we can provide a link to it, and
Great.
so it'll be available. And yes, we can provide a hard copy.
Shareable. Yeah, it's a good shareable.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Walton. Commissioner Frost.
I just want to thank you, Jose. That was really very informative. I had one question. The 90 days, does it start from the point at which you have completed the application, or do you have 90 days to process the application?
No, the 90 days specific to when it goes before LAFCO. So when I issue a certificate of filing, it sets the date in which it's going to come before LAFCO. And I don't think I covered this in my presentation, but the government code requires that certain actions have 21 days notice. So, for example, if we were ready to, if we deemed an application completed yesterday, I could not set it for a hearing for tonight because I need to provide 21 days advance notice. So it would be the first hearing date in which I can provide that 21 days notice. But from that date forward, there's a 90 days in which the commission has to render a decision.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for tonight. This was very informative. Even those of us that have served on LAFCO, this is really great for all of us. So thank you. And thank you for even since you've been here, you didn't just do the job. You went in and figured out how you could work even harder by putting together a plan to do MSRs. And it's like you're all super people. You work so hard, so we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to extend my thank you to participating public, both here in person as well as online. And thank you, Jose, Desiree, and Christy for this information. I want to acknowledge that my fellow commissioners are always very positive and generous in comments to me about LAFCO. And I need to let everyone know that even tonight, I have learned new things, and I'm going to tap some of my fellow commissioners to perhaps foster some additional ideas for the issues and concerns that have come toward us tonight, have come before us tonight. So there is always something new to learn at LAFCO. And I have half a page of notes here of new stuff. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, and I too want to echo what everybody has said. And it's not new. I'm the newest, but I got to say this was a great base for me to I think I know what I'm doing. And then now I am that geek that did write down all the government code, and I already looked up some of it and goes, oh. So there are those of us that will go deep on the policy. So thank you for adding in the government code and this basis, because I think it is training throughout. There are so many new electeds around that this should really just be a standard, and I hope that when you go to the annual LAFCOs, you guys consider presenting this, because I think it will go a long way for all of those who are new to a LAFCO committee as a commissioner. Yes.
Can you send the YouTube link to us, to the board? I would like to share it with some of my counterparts. The new supervisor that's coming on board might really be interested in that.
We'll even queue it up to the beginning of the presentation so that the first
Awesome.
other items on the agenda,
Yeah.
unless you want to listen to them, at least it'll queue up from that presentation forward.
That's great.
It helps give context, but thank you. With that, no other questions. We'll now move on to questions and announcements. It's been a long meeting, and then just want to give a heads up, as Chair Desmond did say, we are moving to September our closed session item, so we will not have an uber long night. But Executive Officer, do you have anything additional to add?
Just wanted to add that for September, for members of the public who are interested in the Airport South, we had originally scheduled the Sphere of Influence Amendment project of that piece for September. Wanted to just give you a heads up that that is contingent upon the release of the final EIR, and we're not sure whether they're going to be able to make that. So for those who are saying, you promised that we're going to have the Sphere of Influence in September. No, we didn't promise such. We targeted. But it's likely that you're not going to have that as part of your, you'll have other fun stuff on your agenda, but that may not be it.
And Member Kaplan, we'll need to take a vote to move closed session to the next meeting.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I so move.
So moved by Commissioner. Okay. Second by Commissioner Frost. All in, we got to vote on, sorry. I can't do the all in favor.
And I'm sorry, motion carries. Unanimous.
Motion passes to move that item to the next, the September meeting. Do I have any commissioner comments? Commissioner Jones?
Yes, thank you. Another shout out to our executive officer and staff for their planning and execution of a very, very successful public workshop, July 16th, in regards to the Del Paso Manor Water District. It was incredibly successful. We had an engaged, appropriate professional discussion amongst almost 80 people there. Super, super informative to all the citizens that attended, and I would say it ended up being very successful. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, Jose. Subsequently, both boards did vote to proceed with the LAFCO process to consider, what's the right word now, consolidation? What?
I think they're going to be pursuing reorganization.
Pursuing reorganization. See, this stuff is critical, and it's always a moving target for me. Anyway, the point is that our staff did a heck of a job, professional, high level, and engaged. And so far, so good, very successful. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Commissioner Jones. Yes.
If I may, Madam Chair, your policy analyst, Fox, wanted to add something.
Absolutely.
Yes. I want to always give kudos to our executive officer. I learn a lot from, obviously, when he does his presentations. This is really good training for staff, and I hope the members of the public and that you all learned something too, as I'm hearing you did. But I want to remind you all that a part of that big ad hoc committee effort, this will be annual. That was what was approved in our internal policy. So LAFCO 101, this was the one we're doing for 2024. But if this is something that is effective, we'll do it again next year. Obviously, it was well done, and hopefully we'll follow the same model and maybe add some different tidbits as well. And then the other element to that education and outreach plan that you all adopted was the MSR 101 that we did July 30th for right before the SDAC meeting, and that was quarterly. And the intention of the MSR 101 was for special districts and folks who engage more with agency customers. And then we do have a plan starting 2025 to do smaller bite-sized education efforts for members of the public via video. So we're going to work on that as staff. And those things will be on our website. They'll probably be about 2 minutes, and they'll touch on specific topics. So a lot more educational efforts coming your way, because that was really important to the ad hoc committee, and to, I know, Commissioner Jones always highlights that, we need to advertise what we're doing and make sure members of the public have access to this information. So just want to let you know there's more to come, and I appreciate the opportunity to allow us to educate you all, us as staff, and members of the public. Oh, and lastly, sorry, I'm going to give all the credit to this beautiful presentation to Miss Christy Graybo. She did the presentation, as much as I want to take credit. It was all Miss Graybo.
I always consider it a highlight when a presentation that some may consider dry, some of us may not, but that we still have members of the public that sit through it with us to learn, because we are public servants, so this is really important that we can educate not only ourselves, but members of the public of what we do. Anything else by our commissioners? Anybody else? All right. Well, then, since we are not going to close session, I will call this meeting adjourned at 7:54. Oh, I missed any public comments on my items not on the agenda.
Thank you so much. No public comments.
All right. Then the meeting is adjourned at 7:54.